Up on the foundation website explaining the entire history of it. But the idea is, as you can see, a number of beacons were put around the world, and the idea being if you could hear the beacon, there's a good chance you can work a station in that area of the country. The idea is the beacons transmit on a 3-minute rotating dial, if you will, and each beacon follows a slot. So each beacon has a 10-second slot starting at the top of the 3-minute hour. Okay, and so you can hear, if you stay tuned to the one frequency on a particular band, if you can hear all the beacons on 20 meters, you're doing very well. That would be rare. Okay, but you can usually hear 3 or 4 beacons. Okay, if propagation is good. There's many programs out there that will show you which beacon should be transmitting at a specific time, and you can see the frequencies you use and where they're located. At any one time, I would say about 65% of the beacons are actually operational. Off the air last May, and the guy that maintained it is actually moving back to Nevada. And I contacted Alan, and he got a hold of Tom and the rest of the club, and for your support, we got it back on the air. So, next slide. Basically, what we did is we said it's on a 3-minute wheel that every station comes on, and they have a 10-second slot distributed around that wheel, so that on 20 meters there's only one station transmitting, and then on the next 10 seconds it's another station. It goes all the way around the wheel. We use GPS to synchronize that, so each one of the stations has a GPS receiver in it, and we use the time marks to synchronize what time it is, and that's how the station knows that it's his turn to transmit. The format is sorry, okay, I'll talk to the slide, sorry. Every one of the beacons now uses, well, except for 2 now, use the same controllers and the same radios. It's a TS50, Kenwood TS50 is the radio for the old controller, and a controller designed by, I think it's Mike Fabry, 84, I think. Given that they've all been out a while, about a year ago we engaged in replacing all the beacon controllers with a new design that we've done, and so they will all eventually be upgraded to the new controller, but right now most of them are running the old one. The sun's shining somewhere around the world all the time, so the upper bands are alive. Next slide.
Very good eyes at the top.
Yeah, 14100 for 20 meters. And so 4U1 UN is the first slot. We gave that the first slot. It's not in the United States. Physically it's the United States, but it's not in United States territory, which had a bit of issues when the Beacon program first came about, because it didn't allow it, so we had to get special waivers from the FCC, and we were getting a little frustrated. Not me personally, but the previous crew was, and so they just got someone in the United Nations building in New York to put a station up, and so that's that one.
And you 10 watts, 1 watt, and 100 milliwatts. So you can tell how good the propagation is. And it does, well, the call sign comes out at 22 words a minute, so.
21.8.
20, oh,
I'm sorry. There's a bit of story I will tell you.
It's in my garage at the moment, and it needs, I need to build a critter-proof box to enclose it, a ventilated critter-proof box. But, you know, in Hawaii, the inside and the outside is, you know, what's the difference? As opposed to some of the other pictures, if you look at their website, there are a number of environmentally challenged locations. Shortened vertical with its own integrated radio system. So it's a compact antenna, I'll say that for it.
I guess one of the things that when we started the new beacon control program, a large number of people said, why bother? The reverse beacon network works just fine. For those that you don't know, there's a guy in Ontario, a VE3NEA, Alex, Russian last name, that wrote a program called CW Skimmer. So it'll basically listen to the audio output of your radio and decode a CW signal and show you the characters for it. He basically built a version that would spot somebody that's sending CQ and then tell you the call sign. And this grew into a lot of people putting these on the air in lots of locations around the world. And then we built a guy on the East Coast, Pete, you remember Pete's last name, and N4ZR, built So what he did is he got all of these stations that were doing spotting from the CW skimmer to send him all the spots he heard, and so he aggregated it. So you could go to the Reverse Beacon Network website and look and see which reverse beacons, aka receivers, are hearing stations where around the world. So you can start transmitting from your transmitter and then go look to see who heard you on the Reverse Beacon Network. So the question is, and it's another way of testing propagation. So the question became, why should we bother with putting these beacons back on the air? Well, part of the reason is the government, turns out, does use it. We didn't know that till we started playing with a few things. We got a few phone calls we didn't expect. The other is it's constant, whereas the Reverse Beacon Network actually expects somebody to transmit, so the data could be fairly old. And the third was that it's fairly well distributed, whereas the Reverse Beacon Network is pretty much concentrated in very populated areas.
Also, all the beacons use basically the same antenna,
Yeah, right.
and that's really important if you're going to try and look at what propagation is.
Yep. Creators of the beacon have long since moved on, and I didn't really have access to any of the original information when we built the second beacon. And it turns out Alex also wrote a program called Pharos, which is basically a program that will automatically capture the beacon signals, listen to the audio at your radio, and automatically control which frequencies the radio's on, and it produces fairly extensive reporting showing what beacons you can hear at your location. So it's become the de facto standard for monitoring the Foundation DX beacons. It gives you very, very good reports. Alex is an interesting scientist, so what happened is we got the first beacon working, fully functional. We put it on the air. First, my house is a test location, and it all seemed to work fine. And then we put it on the air at, actually no, we put it on my house on the air just fine. And I told people it was on the air. It was actually using the KH6RS time slot since that station was off the air. And we told people to go monitor, and we got many good reports back that it was fine, it sounded fine, it worked just exactly as it should. But for the love of us, we could not get Pharos to copy it. Pharos refused to say that it was a beacon signal. And I dropped a note to Alex, and he lives in Ontario. We went back and forth quite a bit. He told me some things. One of the things he told me is, so one of the problems Alex was trying to make sure is when he heard a signal on that frequency, that he wanted to make sure it actually was the beacon. Okay, because sometimes people use the beacon frequencies for other than the beacon. People get on the beacon frequencies. Okay, so he actually wrote the program about 10 years after the original beacons were put on the air. So he basically reverse engineered what the beacons were doing. So one of the things he told me is it's not actually 22 words per minute, it's actually 21.8 words per minute. He had measured it very, very precisely. And I says, well, how much leeway do you give me? He says, none. I said, okay, so I went back and fixed the clock. So there's 21.8. Still didn't work. Okay, and so finally what we did to find out what was going on is I went over to Tom Burson's house, who lives in Palo Alto. We're all in Northern California. And I said, Tom, from your place we can hear both the existing working, well publicized W6WX beacon on Mount Amanam, and we can hear my house. Okay, let's compare the two and see if we can figure out what's wrong. And we finally came to realize that the new beacon code was starting to transmit 300 milliseconds too soon.
Crossword synchronized?
We were,
Oh.
but we didn't have access to the old code, so we didn't know how long from the top of the second until it actually started transmitting. Okay, so it turns out I was, bam, dead on, okay, because I've spent a lifetime building time clocks, okay, right? And it turns out the old guys were not quite that accurate, okay, because they didn't allow for it. So we were starting 300 milliseconds too soon. So it was easy enough for me to move it back 300 milliseconds. As soon as we did, it came on the air. Within 5 minutes, I got an email from Alex saying, oh, it looks like you figured it out. Going, the hell, you knew what was wrong all along, you wouldn't even tell me. So anyway, that's my story of the beacon timing. So one, we actually tell the radio via the CAT interface. go to this power level. It has a command that says set your, on the front you can adjust the power level knob.
Okay,
Okay, well, you can also programmatically tell it this is the power level you should go to. And so that's what we do, is the controller actually sends a command to
when
it.
it drops into the bottom two levels, it sounds a little bit like a radio that's being keyed with a dirty key.
Really?
Yeah.
I hadn't heard
But
that.
I noticed it on some of the other stations as well as this.
Okay, I haven't noticed that, but that's a good report. Okay, I'll dig in and listen.